The Psychology of Money. And its core message is simple. Getting good with money has way less to do with what you know and a whole lot more to do with how you behave. It's all about what's going on in your head. Right, this is the foundation for everything we're about to talk about. Financial success isn't about being the smartest person in the room, it's a soft skill. And there is no better way to understand this than through the true story of two men who could not be more different. So, on one side of our story, you have Ronald Reed. He was a humble janitor and gas station attendant from rural Vermont. And on the other side, Richard Fuscone, a high-flying, Harvard-educated Merrill Lynch executive. You know, one guy had zero formal training, the other had the absolute best financial pedigree you could buy. And here's where the story takes a turn you would never expect. Ronald Reed, the janitor, quietly saved what little he could, invested it patiently for decades, and when he died, he was a secret multimillionaire who left over $8 million to charity. Meanwhile, Fuscone, the Harvard exec, borrowed tons of money to fund this huge, extravagant life and lost every single penny when the market crashed in 2008. So that's the big question, right? How does this even happen? It clearly wasn't about intelligence or credentials. The real difference, the thing that mattered, was behavior. It was about patience versus greed. And understanding that is the key to the entire psychology of money.
All right, let's jump into our first big idea. No one is crazy. People do some pretty wild things with money. We've all seen it. But here's the thing. Their actions always make perfect sense to them in that moment.
And this is why. Think about it. Our own personal experience with money is just this tiny, tiny fraction of everything that's ever happened in the history of the economy. But that little sliver, it shapes about 80% of how we think the whole system works. It's our anchor. And everyone's anchor is dropped in a different place. You can really see this play out in the real world. Just look at these charts. If you were born in 1950, you saw stocks go absolutely nowhere during your formative years. But if you were born in 1970, you saw them go up tenfold. Your views on risk and reward are going to be fundamentally different, not because one of you is smarter, but because you literally grew up in different financial worlds. This quote from JFK just nails the point. Here's a guy who would later run the entire US economy, and he's admitting that his personal experience of the Great Depression was one of prosperity, not hardship. Our own personal lens really does shape everything we believe about money. So our personal lens shapes our decisions, for sure. But what about the things that are totally out of our control? Well, that brings us to two powerful, invisible forces we often forget about: luck and risk. They're basically twins, two sides of the very same coin. To understand this, you have to hear the incredible story of Bill Gates and his best friend, Kent Evans. They were both brilliant kids, both completely obsessed with computers. And it just so happened they went to one of the only high schools in the entire world that had a computer in 1968. They planned to start a company together, to take over the world. But one of them never got the chance. I mean, just think about that. Bill Gates got a 1 in a million lucky break just by going to that school. His friend, Kent Evans, who was just as skilled, just as driven, was hit by a 1 in a million tragedy. It's the same invisible force, the same magnitude, just pointing in opposite directions. It's a pretty humbling reminder that our outcomes are never, ever entirely in our own hands. So these external forces of luck and risk are incredibly powerful, but they often crash into an even more powerful internal force, that insatiable hunger for more and the incredible danger of not knowing when you finally have enough. This quote from the author Joseph Heller says it all. So the story goes, he's at a party with his friend Kurt Vonnegut, and Vonnegut points out that some billionaire hedge fund manager at the party made more money in a single day than Heller's classic novel Catch-22 had made in its entire history. And Heller's reply? Yes, but I have something he will never have. Enough. Wow. Just one of the wisest things ever said about money. And if you want to see what happens when you don't know what enough is, look no further than these two. Rajat Gupta was the CEO of McKinsey. He was already worth $100 million. Bernie Madoff ran a hugely profitable, totally legal business. They both had it all, but they wanted more, and they ended up risking everything they had and needed for something they absolutely didn't. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Why? Why do people who already have everything risk it all for something they don't even need? And the answer, so often, is the poison of social comparison. It's that feeling that the goalpost is always moving, just a little further away. So the real skill to learn here is how to define enough for yourself. That means you have to make a conscious choice to stop moving the goalposts. You have to get off that treadmill of comparing yourself to others. And you have to realize that some things, your reputation, your freedom, your family, are just never worth the risk, no matter how big the potential gain is. All right, let's get to our final and maybe most important piece of the puzzle. If the key to building wealth isn't about being a genius who gets crazy returns, then what is it? Well, the book argues it's something much simpler, but way more powerful: compounding. Okay, take a good look at this number: $81.5 billion. Any guesses what this represents? Because the answer is basically the secret sauce to one of the greatest fortunes ever built. Get ready for this, because it is truly mind-blowing. That number is the amount of Warren Buffett's net worth that was earned after he was old enough to get Social Security. Almost all of it. It wasn't about one brilliant move. It was just decades and decades of good, solid moves, one after another, uninterrupted. And this right here is the whole story in one sentence. We all focus on his skill as an investor. And yeah, he's a legend. But his real superpower, his secret weapon, it's that he's been investing consistently since he was a kid. His secret is time. This chart just drives the point home perfectly. You've got Jim Simons, who is arguably the greatest investor of all time, with annual returns that are 3 times what Buffett got, and yet Buffett is way, way richer. Why? Simple. Simons didn't really hit his investing stride until he was 50. Buffett had a multi-decade head start, and all that extra time for his money to compound made all the difference. So what this really proves is that good investing isn't about chasing the highest possible returns. It's not about hitting home runs. It's about getting pretty good returns that you can stick with for the longest possible period of time, because that's when the real magic of compounding takes over. Okay, so let's tie this all together. The big takeaways are pretty clear. Financial success is not a hard science, it's a soft skill. How you behave, your ability to manage your own greed, to avoid catastrophic mistakes, and to just stay in the game is so much more important than what's in a textbook. And the most powerful financial skill of all? It's just good old-fashioned patience. In the end, what this all tells us is that building wealth has less to do with spreadsheets and more to do with your own personal story. It's all about how you personally navigate your relationship with greed, with risk, and with time. And that really boils it all down to one simple but incredibly profound question you have to ask yourself: what is your definition of enough?